so we can keep going. All right, so I think I think we've lost our young people for this week, so it's only us old fogies in here now. So that means I could slow down a little bit because I was trying to cover what we wanted to get through with them, and I think there's a lot more that we could have, but since we only had them in here for a limited period of time, I wanted to get through certain information. So we'll kind of back up a little bit here and talk through a little bit of stuff. Jimmy, you probably aren't prepared to go through and do anything this morning, right? As far as, because I didn't talk to you about that. Yeah, I didn't think so.
I could,
but we might circle. If anybody wants to see it, we'll take like a poll here and see if people want to see Jimmy up on doing his thing here on investments and stuff toward the end. But if anybody wants to see that, we can circle back around on that at some point. But for today, and I'm a little out of kilter because I was running late this morning. I don't know why, but we're going to just do a quick recap of some things and then go into what I had said really would have normally been the first thing after the principles that I would have gone into, which is figuring out what your financial condition actually is, because that's kind of important to know in order to be able to analyze all these other things. So we'll go into that. But first, just like we have been doing, I wanted to cover, because these are the important things. The first and most important thing that we've talked about, what is it? What did we say the proper view of money is?
It's all God's.
It's all God's. That's right. It's all God's. We don't really own it anyway, so it's our job to do what? To do a good job of managing it, right? And to use it the way He wants us to. So that's the most important thing. And then we talked about from the Money Matters stuff, kind of what they said, the 5 quick things that you can think through that are important. Get out of debt. Act your wage. That was one thing that I was confused on at first because I thought they were saying act your age. It's act your wage. So get out of debt, act your wage, get on a budget. We'll talk about that. We may get to that today. I don't know how far we'll get along today, but talk a little bit more about a budget. And then saving and investing, and then giving, of course. And I don't think that that's in a list of necessarily what's most important. I think that those are just 5 pillars that we should be using as far as our money goes. Oh yeah, there's our most important thing right there. I forgot that I had that up there. Or Dave had it up there, I should say. All right. And then I probably, if I can figure out, there we go. Okay, and then we talked about my sort of the principles that I had come up with as far as dealing with money. And first off, we talked about that God's arrangement from the beginning was for us to work. So we're designed to want to work. And if you remember, that work at first was pretty basic, right? Taking care of the garden. I don't know what all that entailed, but that's what they were doing. And then whenever they sinned, what happened? It got a lot harder, right? So things got a lot harder for us. But anyway, we're kind of wired to want to do something. We don't want to just sit around doing nothing. So I think that's an important thing to realize. We're not supposed to be dishonest. We're supposed to be fair. We're supposed to get our money with honest means or honest ways and being fair, right? Like that's God hates dishonest scales. If you remember, we read that scripture. We should put the gaining of possessions and money in the right place in our lives. Like that needs to take the right place, which is where? Not above God, right? That doesn't mean that we don't do it, but it needs to have the right place in your order of priority. Content, so not always wanting more, not greedy. Be content with what we have. And there again, that doesn't mean that we don't strive for more. It just means that your attitude is thankful and content with what God's given us. Like we said, use our money wisely and to serve Him. So everything we're talking about kind of deals with that, right? About how to try to do that. pay our debts. We talked a little bit about that. And one thing that I did think of in our discussion about getting out of debt and what's good debt and bad debt, I think Lisa had said that Ramsey, the only good debt to him is the mortgage because that's an asset that appreciates while all other assets depreciate. The one other thing that I thought of, and this is where I think, obviously there's sometimes where people might have to go into debt a little bit beyond that, but just as far as what good debt would be is if it's something like almost like a business thing where you're going to get a return on investment. Sometimes you have to borrow money to make money. So like for instance, if you're going to be a truck driver, you would have to and you need a truck, but you don't have the money to get the truck. You might have to borrow the money to get the truck, but then that's earning money because that's how you're making money. So I might take a little bit of issue with him on that because that could, not always, but that could be something where it would make sense to take on that debt if it's going to be used and have a return on it. Because the truck's still going to depreciate. That's going to happen, but you're also making money while you're using it. So, in that instance. And then we talked about giving. Giving should be, most people kind of will take a little bit out of their pocket. Well, I shouldn't say most people, a lot of people. A lot of people will take, like if they're at church, will just take a little bit of money out of their pocket, throw it in the plate, or at the end of the month, if they have a little left over, we'll give it to God or whatever. That's not the way we're supposed to be. Giving is supposed to be something we deliberately think through, and based off of what we make, we're supposed to give to Him. And that should be a priority. So that should, on your budget, when we go to budgeting, like giving could almost be your top line if you were putting in order of priority. And should be, like it should come off the top.
Yeah, we have it in our budget, it's a line item that it's in an Excel document, but it
Right.
automatically calculates and
Takes whatever percentage you want to put, yep. And we talked about that. A lot of people do a lot less than 10% too, because and I agree, it's not a command in the New Testament. In the Old Testament, they were commanded to tithe. That's 10%, right? But in the New Testament, we don't really see that. But the indications are actually that they were told to give more, right? I mean, if you read through it, that it was give more. So I think we sometimes skimp a little bit when it comes to that. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go. All right. Where am I here? Yeah, okay, these are some passages that we did. And, I'm into the process, okay. No, those are the ones I have for today. Never mind. I'm out of order here. Okay, we'll stop there for the moment. All right, so today I want to go back. Like I said, this really probably would have been lesson number 2 after our introduction and principles, because I think in order to do some of the other stuff that we talked about, you kind of have to know where you're at in your financial position. But this one's not as important for the young people because they don't really have a financial condition, not much of one anyway. You might have a little bit of one, but not much at this point. So we kind of skipped over that. But let's see. There, that's the one we're going to start with here. Luke 14:26 through 33. If one of you guys back there is ready to read that one. Sorry, I'm going out of order. I don't remember which order I gave it to you in, but
It's fine. If anyone comes to me and does not hate his own father and mother and wife and children and brothers and sisters, yes, even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. Whoever does not carry his own cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. For which one of you, when he wants to build a tower, does not first sit down and calculate the cost to see if he has enough to complete it? Otherwise, when he has laid a foundation and is not able to finish, all who observe it begin to ridicule him, saying, "This man began to build and was not able to finish." Or what king, when he sets out to meet another king in battle, will not first sit down and consider whether he's strong enough with 10,000 men to encounter one coming against him with 20,000? Or else, while others are still far away, he sends a delegation and asks for terms of peace. So then, none of you can be my disciple who does not give up all his possessions.
Okay, now this passage, what's Jesus talking about here? What's his emphasis in this scripture? Does it have anything to do with finances?
Well, specifically, no, but it does in one sense.
Right. Yeah. He's not talking about financial condition here. He's talking about weighing the cost of what you're going to do. Right. So in this passage, he talks about two different people. One's a builder who sits down to see if he has enough material to finish a building, to finish the building before he starts construction. Right. And the second one's a king who sits down and thinks about, do I have an army that can beat this other army before going to battle, right? So basically putting thought and planning what's going to happen. Now he's talking about taking stock of becoming his disciple and saying, what's it going to cost you, and weigh that before you make the decision to become his disciple, basically. Now then, here he says a couple things here that are pretty interesting about hating your own father and mother and wife and children, and giving up all your possessions. What is that? Does that mean that we should hate our family? Jimmy's shaking his head. What's he mean, Jimmy?
You need to be willing to follow Christ. He's making a radical example.
Mm-hmm. He's making a ridiculous statement to emphasize where he should rank. Where does Jesus rank as far as what you're doing? Above everything else, right? And then what about possessions? Does that mean that we should never have any possessions? Because he just said we should give up everything we own.
He also said the person who builds the tower. Obviously, somebody's building something that's
right. Yeah. So it's
significant cost.
So it's once again making an emphasis on where do possessions rank in relation to what your relationship with God and with Jesus, right? So it's a priority thing. Once again, like what we were talking about, where does it rank as far as what's important to you? As far as our personal finances are concerned, there are two different things we need to analyze. One we should be doing constantly, and when I say constantly, I don't mean like every minute of every day or anything like that. I just mean often, and that would be budgeting. Like we should be, looking at our budget fairly frequently and seeing how we compare to it, and then redoing it if we need to, and those kind of things. Kind of like and I forgot to mention we have a perfect example of somebody who didn't think, and we talked about this last week, I think, that didn't think through the construction costs, right? Like we got that unfinished building that's been, the ark that's unfinished for 30 years or 40 years or whatever. Like they didn't take stock of how much it was going to cost and didn't have enough funds for it. So that's a perfect example of that. Anyway, now I got myself off and got myself messed up. Where was I? Budgeting, right? We need to recalculate, kind of like your GPS. If you make a wrong turn and something goes wrong, you have to recalculate. So you have to be tracking it and knowing it in order to be able to make those recalculations. So budgeting and tracking your budget is pretty important. And this is where we take stock of how much income we are planning to bring in versus how much we are planning to spend. And it needs to be looked at often because we have monthly expenses that are to be paid. The other one that I would say needs to be done every once in a while would be our financial condition. And that's what I'm talking about. Like we need to know where we're at in order to be able to make those decisions. It specifically needs to be checked out if you're considering something large like a mortgage or some other loan or something like that. We need to know where we stand before we borrow money, basically. So in this, goals are important. You hear a lot of people talk about retirement planning and what your goals are for that. But there are other types of goals that we can talk about here too. As illustrated in the scripture that we just read, planning is important. You have heard the saying, people don't plan to fail, they fail to plan. Like that's a common little saying. And we often are guilty of that, right? We just kind of don't take the time to do what we need to do to make sure something's successful. Like anytime you're planning an event, it's not just going to come together by itself, right? Like Walk for Water, we have to put some thought and planning into it, or else it's not going to work. So we do that. So as we talked about in our first lesson, God does not condemn planning ahead. Let's read, I think we're backing up here, yep. James 4:13 through 16.
Come now, who you say, today or tomorrow we will go to such and such a city and spend a year there and engage in business and make profit. Yet you do not know what your life will be like tomorrow. You are just like a vapor that appears for a little while and then vanishes away. Instead, you ought to say, if the Lord wills, we will live and also live this or that. But as it is, you boast your arrogance, and such boasting is evil.
All right, so here, if we just read that on its face, does this condemn planning? Does it say we shouldn't plan ahead and think about what we're going to do next year? On its face, it might sound that way, right? Because it says, come now, you who say today or tomorrow we'll go and do such this or that. You don't even know what's going to happen tomorrow, right? But I don't think that's what it's saying. I don't think it's condemning planning, but it's condemning planning as if you know what the future holds and not considering what God wants in that future. That's what these people were. It's arrogance and pride. It's what they're guilty of. So goals or planning actually gives us direction and helps us to serve better, to use our money more wisely. Also, the goals can provide motivation for us to perform better. So we'll talk about goals, assuming we have enough time here this morning, which I think we should, hopefully, unless I keep yammering. All right, so let's take a look at how to determine your financial condition. Now, Dave, I sent you an Excel sheet that was with that financial condition. Not that one, the other one, the next one, I think. Yeah, there you go. All right, so let's look at how to determine the financial condition. The listing out of your financial assets and determining their values may not be easy, but it's important to try to be as accurate as possible. I have this illustration up here that we'll go through. Here's a few questions. How many people here use Excel? I'm assuming most everybody knows Excel at this point, probably. If not, any kind of financial software or whatever can work for this kind of thing as well. There's quick, like some people use QuickBooks or different things to put this together. But you can do it in Excel real easily. Does everybody know what an asset is? What's an asset?
Something that produces.
Produces? It's something that you own.
Yeah.
So an asset can be money, it could be your car, it could be your house, an investment of some sort.
Banks like it when you have assets because it's something you can borrow.
Right, you can borrow against your house. Now, if your house has a mortgage on it, then you have the asset, but you also have a liability. And usually they don't allow you to borrow more than, I think, 80% against it, I think is usually, I guess sometimes more, but then you have to pay like a special insurance on it if you're above the 80% or whatever. Now, I just used the term my next question, what is a liability?
An anchor that drags you down.
A liability is something that you owe, right? Now then, when it comes to personal finance, we may have liabilities like a mortgage or a car loan or things like that, But you also have to consider, and the same way with a business, but there's a lot of stuff that's not on your listing as a liability that you owe each month. Like we all owe our bills each month. So you could call that a liability too, but it's not a liability on your balance sheet because you don't owe it yet. You owe it next month. So that's what a liability is. Do you know the difference between current and non-current assets? What's the difference between a current asset and a non-current asset? There we say there's current right there that you can see. Maybe a better way of asking that would be, what's a non-current asset?
Something's coming in the future. Future payments that you are guaranteed.
Okay, yeah, that could be that's a non-current asset. Something like a pension. If you had a pension that you would be getting in the future, you may not list that as an asset on your financial condition if it's a pension. Now, if it's a 401k plan where you actually own the money, I think it would go in there. If it's a pension, it wouldn't, because you're not going to get the money unless you're there to get it. Like, it's only going to come in as you're there. Well, in business terms, it's anything that you can't get within a year. But yeah, from a personal term, probably more like within a month. Like if you can't get it, then it's not current. So your house would be an example. Like that's not considered to be current because you can't just you could turn it into cash if you can sell it quickly, but then you don't have your house anymore. So that it depends on what you're doing with that. So your house, your car typically wouldn't be considered current because you're using it. You're not getting cash for it. Anything that you can get to quickly, like a bank account or even an investment that you can turn into cash quickly. Now, when I say turn into cash, that doesn't necessarily mean cash in your hand. These days, a lot of it's more in the bank where you're moving it around electronically. But same thing. It's cash. It's what dollar for dollar, what you can pay for there. Do you know what net worth is? What's your net worth? Yeah, your assets minus your liability. So whatever you own less whatever you owe is your net worth. You want that to be positive. If it's negative, what does that mean? Yeah, it means that you're leveraged. You owe more than what you own. Where can that happen? How does that happen? How do you end up?
You kids do it every day nowadays. They go out and buy a brand new car.
Yep. Okay. Cars are a perfect example. The moment you buy a car, we talked about this. You drive it off the lot. You just got a loan on it based on its new value. But as soon as you drive it off the lot, it's worth less. So now you're upside down.
They gotta have a car, but they don't understand you don't have to have a brand new one.
Right. Yep.
But they want a brand new one.
That's that. The other. So cars are a big one. The other one is quick credit, like you're using your credit card.
Yeah, Dave.
Put you upside down real quick if you go out and spend on a credit card.
House will put you upside down pretty quick.
What's that?
A house will put
A house can as well. Yeah, that's why you.
on the
Yep.
front end when you owe.
Yeah, if it's one where they let you borrow more than you should against it, like think people. What happened? If you guys remember the mortgage crisis, a lot of people were borrowing. How was that working? I'm trying to remember. It was a while ago, so I'm trying to remember. They were putting interest-only payments on these mortgages, so the mortgage wasn't going down. It was only interest payments. The mortgage was staying there. So whenever the loans basically were no good because they never were going to get paid, and so that whole value, if you were invested in those mortgage funds, they'd bundle them together, make them look good, and then they weren't any good. That was a big problem. But if you're not paying, if all you're doing is paying interest payments, then you're not reducing that debt, and that can cause that kind of a problem in the future as well. Do you guys know what market value versus historical cost is? That's usually in relation to a house or stocks or things like that. Do you know what that means? Market value versus historical? Yeah, market's what you can get now. Historical is what you paid for it, or what it was whenever you bought it. So if you got a stock, if anybody has a 401k plan or an investment or something, or if you're in a mutual fund, a lot of times you'll see unrealized gain. That means that in the market, what they could sell it for right now, you haven't realized the gain because you haven't sold it, but it would sell at that much higher than what it was when you bought it. So that's kind of what market value versus historical cost is. You know what principal portion is? What a principal portion of a debt payment is?
Yeah, it's the amount minus the interest.
Yeah, so if you get a big loan, the way it works, your first payments mostly go to interest and only a little bit goes to your principal. And then as you pay it down, that starts to level out, and then eventually you're paying more principal than you are interest. But principal, and that's why if you get a long mortgage, and I don't remember where I have this, I assume I have it somewhere in my lessons, but if you're able to pay more in the early years, like if you're able to save up, like say you have $1,000 a month mortgage payment, and over the course of a year you save up $5,000 extra, and you're like, what do I do with this? If you put it against the mortgage, you put that $5,000, you might cut 3 years of payments off your mortgage by doing that, or 4 years, because that interest is front loaded in the way that payments go. So instead of, if you have a 30-year mortgage, by paying $5,000 extra on that, you might cut it down to 26 years or something like that. So that's where principal, like you're not getting that, you don't do it if you're just making the normal payments, but if you add extra, a little bit extra a month, some loans don't allow you to do that, but some you can do extra a month or extra a year. Most of them allow you to pay something extra somewhere along the way. You can cut down the life of that loan quite a bit. All right, APR. What does APR mean? Annual percentage rate. Where's the worst annual percentage rates?
Where?
Yeah.
Credit cards.
Credit cards.
Oh, absolutely, 33%.
Yep. Credit cards. If you let a balance carry over on your credit card, you'll probably pay for whatever you bought 3 times if you let it carry over like 2 months. So 2 or 3 months. Yeah, so it's massive. So you don't want to be on a credit card. We keep emphasizing that. Don't go on a credit card. Don't let anything carry over on a credit card. But annual percentage rate, we showed that last week or the week before about how calculating the amount of interest has a huge impact either on an investment or on a loan. Like how much you're getting on it will as to how much you're paying or how much you're getting by the interest rate. Obviously, if it's on an asset, you want more. If it's on a debt, you want less. Everybody knows what an amortization schedule is. We put one of those up there last week. That's how the principal. That's where you see the principal payment, the interest payment portion, and how it goes down. That's an amortization schedule. And finally, before we keep going here, what does the present value of money mean?
What you can borrow, isn't it?
Present value.
Like as inflation goes up, like a loaf of bread used to be $1, now it's $2. So if you spent $1 5 years ago, it was worth $1 and you got a loaf of bread. Now your dollar is only worth half a loaf of bread.
So yeah, present value is a term you're using when you're looking at the future and you're saying, I'm going to receive this much money in the future, or I have this much saved. How much is it actually going to be worth in the future? What's the present? It's a calculation because you're getting into the future, but what's the value actually right now? So like if you were going to get a $500,000, like if somebody was just going to give you $500,000, but it was going to be 10 years from now, how much would that $500,000 be worth right now?
You're saying if you got it right.
Yeah, oh yeah. Let me rephrase that. How much would it be worth 5 years? How much is it? Okay, if they're going to give you $500,000,
Right now.
as like they're telling you right now, but it's going to be 5 years in the future. How much is it actually worth?
Depends on inflation and everything else somewhere.
Right, you calculate it using inflation, the projection of inflation, and it's only worth like $400,000 on your books right now, because you're not going to get it for 5 years. I'm saying that wrong. Yeah, I kind of messed that up the way I'm telling you, but
The calculations have changed for retirement too,
Yeah.
because 5 years ago, $1 million was kind of the sweet spot at a rate of 4% withdrawal per year, and now it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 1.5 million.
right.
So just in 5 years, it's jumped
Right. So yeah, it affects how much you're going to need for the future, and also like I said, if you were doing your financial, this is related to your financial condition. If you were putting an asset on your books for something you weren't going to get for 5 more years, it wouldn't be at that full value. Is what I was trying. That's what I was trying to say. Like I said it. I asked it totally the wrong way, but Jacob had it right as far as what he was saying. You calculate in the time value of money with the inflation and what it is, and you do a calculation, and it comes out, and it would depending on what those variables are, it would, like I said, just rounding, and just to give an example, if somebody was going to give you $500,000 5 years from now on your financial statement, it may only be worth $400,000 because you're saying it's not worth that full amount because I don't have it right now. I don't have use of it. It's only going to be worth $400,000 at the point that I get it, basically. So that's kind of what I was getting at, and I totally didn't plan ahead properly for that one. Okay, so current assets, cash is the basic current asset. Anything you have in cash is generally considered safe. Generally, you guys know about the FDIC limits on your bank accounts. Like if you have over $100,000, it's not insured. So if you have more than $100,000 in a bank account and you're worried about that, you can go to different banks and open up a $100,000 account at one bank or at another. I think it's $100,000. I could be wrong on that. But anyway, generally, cash is considered to be safe. Other current assets consist of anything that can be quickly converted into cash, like Jacob said. So stocks and bonds, potentially, depending on how you have them invested. Usually you can convert them, but they may not be worth, depending on what, like CDs. Like if you're in a CD, you can always get to that CD, but you may not get the interest off of it if you draw it early. That as what it's a penalty for drawing, because by getting a CD, what you've told the bank is you can have my money for 6 months. The bank's going to go and invest that for a higher rate than what they give you, and then at the end of that 6 months, they're going to give it back to you with the interest as they said it would. But if you pull it at 3 months, they're not going to give you that interest. It's going to be a penalty. They're going to say, oh, you're taking it before you said you were going to, so you don't get it. So you can get to the cash, but it's not necessarily good to pull that kind of stuff out early. Once again, stocks, depending on the stock, it can be pretty risky. Most of you in here, I imagine, would want to go for mutual funds. They're already diversified to some degree. And then, of course, there's different risks in mutual funds. You got mutual funds that invest in large cap, small cap, medium cap, international funds, bonds, different things. Now, what I was going to have Jimmy show you last week, and we didn't get to it, and we didn't talk about him doing it this week either, was just he I think, does get into some specifics, like buying specific stocks and things like that.
So
Yeah.
Pretty much the same thing, but I choose.
You choose,
the thing
yeah.
that I pick.
So, but in general, where are most of us going to be doing this? Like in our 401k plan that our employer provides, or in your IRA, things like that. You're gonna do invest in certain mutual funds or things like that. Those would be non-current assets if you're talking your 401k or your IRA, because you don't get to those until sometime in the future, and that's where you want to try to grow as much as you can to keep up with inflation, so that whenever we retire, we have something to live off of.
When I talk about it, I'll talk about diversifying that too, because we do, we have our retirement account, which we can't touch till 59 and a half years old. Then a taxable brokerage account that's just kind of like investment play money if, let it grow and have fun with it. And then the kid accounts, the custodial accounts for the kids, and those are also ETFs. We can't touch that, but the kids can. They assume 100% of that at the age of maturity, which is 21 in Pennsylvania. So that'll all be theirs.
Theirs, right. And then, as far as the investments, if you're putting into a 401k, those would go under your non-current assets there, which are hard to get to, but I had thought while you were talking that you said something that made me think of something, and now I forget what it was. It'll come to me. Anyway, Oh, I remember now. We talked a little bit last week about that, about how you can, you have your tax strategies, and for most of us in here, probably we want pre-tax like deductions. You want you don't want to use a Roth, because a Roth would be post-tax, and it helps you get your earnings tax-free, but you still get taxed on that money now. You have to do kind of a calculation and figure out which way is better for you. But in the end, if all things being equal, they should come out the same in theory, because if you get taxed now, you'll have less in your investment, but it'll grow tax-free. If you don't get taxed now, you'll have more in your investment. In theory, if everything stays equal, what you do if you're getting in a Roth is you're saying, I still expect my income to be high when I'm retired. That would be a reason to get in a Roth. Or I think tax rates are going to go up. That's the two things that you would be thinking if you're getting into like post-tax stuff. But there's different means of doing that. Like you can have your pre-tax investment, your post-tax investments, and those post-tax investments can be, like I said, 401k Roth, IRA Roth. You can do just investment, just regular, and that would be after tax. Or you could do, like I said, a whole life insurance policy. That's after tax. That comes with that kind of stuff. So there's different ways you can do that. Anyway, I'm talking way too long, and I'm not going to get to goals at this point, probably. But okay. So other non-current assets, we talked about house, retirement, and cash value of life insurance would fall under that those categories. Now, the cash value of life insurance actually can become more current as after several years. After it's gotten a value, you can start borrowing against that cash value, but that would be down the road several years after you get the policy. Okay, current liabilities, items that you will be due. If it's a business, it's within 1 year. If you personal, like you guys were talking, probably like month to month, you'd be talking. That's your current, how much you owe. And this is the the total of any loan payments. Well, liabilities, you don't put you won't put your utilities and those kind of things on here because, like I said, those come due as they come. But you will put on things like loan payments, credit card balances, those kind of loan balances, those kind of things. And this would be the amount that would come due in the next year. So if you have a mortgage, there's a portion of it that's going to come due in the next year, and then there's a portion of it that's further down the road, right? So that's your current versus non-current. So once you figure all this out, what different assets you have and what liabilities you have and what your net worth is, this gives you a picture of what your true financial condition is, and will help with figuring out what you can do with different loans and things like that. You guys know what working capital is? In business, working capital is current assets minus current liability. So that's how much extra you have currently that you could spend beyond what you owe. So that tells you, and if you're negative on that, that means you got a problem. Like you're not going to be able to pay what's due as it's due. And then, of course, net worth, we said take your total assets minus your total liabilities. And the goal is to always have a positive amount there and to grow it as you get older. And once again, all of this should be done considering all the stuff. You want it not in a vacuum. You want to take everything we talked about, giving and those kind of things should all go into this planning as you're looking at that. All right, so we are to goals, but I ran out of time. I said we'd get the goals before the end, but we're out of time. So we'll pick up with goals and budgeting next week, and hopefully we'll get through budgeting next week if I don't start talking too much about something. Yeah, I slowed down. I slowed down a little bit more than I meant to. Sorry, but yeah, we'll pick up next week, and not next week, 2 weeks from now, because next week is Mark, right?
Correct.
Yeah, next week Mark will be here, so we'll pick up 2 weeks from now with those